Have you ever wondered why many adults still feel like they're playing the role of a grown-up? Or why they continuously seek new sensations and adventures, yet never feel satisfied? Today, I want to explore one of the most intriguing concepts in analytical psychology, Puer Aeternus, or the eternal child. The term Puer Aeternus originates from Roman mythology, but it was Carl Gustav Jung who introduced it into modern psychology. This is not simply the Peter Pan syndrome that we often hear about. It's much more complex, a profound psychological archetype that influences how we develop, form relationships, and find meaning in life. Marie-Louise von Franz, Jung's student, dedicated her entire career to researching this phenomenon. In her seminal work, The Problem of the Puer Aeternus, she describes people influenced by this archetype as maintaining an adolescent psychology even as they enter middle age. They live in a world of potential and possibility, not reality and achievement. To understand the origins of Puer Aeternus more deeply, we need to look at ancient mythology. In Greek mythology, the image of Dionysus, the eternally young god of wine and excitement, can be considered a primordial model. This deity symbolizes impulsiveness, endless joy, and liberation from societal constraints. Meanwhile, Hermes, the god of boundaries, travel, and new paths, also carries many characteristics of Puer, with the ability to move freely between worlds, never limited to one specific place. In Roman culture, we see the image of Cupid, the eternal child who flies freely, connecting love but never himself bound by it. These mythological symbols show that the Puer archetype has existed in human consciousness since ancient times. In the digital age, this archetype has become especially prevalent. Our society worships youth, encourages staying 25 forever, and creates countless opportunities to escape reality. Social media becomes a space where we can continuously reinvent ourselves and maintain a perfect, idealized image. The world of gaming and virtual reality creates spaces where we can live different lives, unconstrained by reality. Dating apps create the illusion of endless choices, making commitment more difficult. On TikTok, we see the trend of Peter Pan dating, the phenomenon of adults only dating short-term, continuously seeking the initial excitement of relationships but avoiding deep development and long-term attachment. The beauty market constantly sells anti-aging products, reinforcing the fear of growing old. Even in the employment sector, we see the increasing trend of job hopping, reflecting the difficulty in making long-term commitments to a career. One of the most prominent modern examples of Puer Aeternus in popular culture is the character Tony Stark in the Marvel Universe. Genius, wealthy, charming, but emotionally unstable, unable to maintain healthy relationships until experiencing trauma and transformation. His journey from man-child to responsible father illustrates the process of psychological maturation that Jung described. Similarly, we see signs of Puer in many literary and cinematic characters. Jay Gatsby with his utopian dream of an idealized past, Don Draper in Mad Men with his constant escape from his true identity, or Walter White in Breaking Bad with his illusion of specialness and power. These stories aren't just entertainment, they reflect the psychological aspects that many of us are facing. Psychologist Robert Bly, in his work The Sibling Society, analyzed the phenomenon of sibling culture, a horizontal society without authentic adult models, where everyone wants to be siblings, no one wants to be parents. Bly argues that the absence of transition rituals, the weakening of the extended family model, and the prevalence of adolescent values in popular culture have contributed to creating a society in which becoming a complete adult is increasingly difficult. According to demographic researchers, traditional adulthood, defined by leaving the parental home, marriage, having children, and career stability, is being significantly delayed, with many people now only reaching these milestones in their 30s or even 40s. People with Puer Aeternus characteristics often exhibit a fear of imprisonment, an intense fear of constraints, leading to difficulty in making decisions and commitments. Psychologist James Hollis calls this the fear of being engulfed, when each choice is perceived as the death of countless other possibilities. Those influenced by Puer are often attracted to professions related to freedom and creativity. They can be talented artists, creative entrepreneurs, breakthrough thinkers, but simultaneously struggle to turn ideas into reality. They may move from project to project, from relationship to relationship, always seeking new challenges, but rarely completing what they've started. Jung points out that Puer often has a complex relationship with the mother image in psychology. This can manifest as excessive dependence on women or avoidance of intimacy for fear of being controlled. The early mother-child relationship profoundly influences how a person develops the ability to bond and be autonomous. John Bowlby, a psychologist famous for attachment theory, pointed out that insecure attachment in childhood can lead to difficulties in forming healthy relationships as adults. Many people with puer characteristics may have experienced either overprotective relationships or, conversely, insufficient security with their mothers, leading to oscillation between longing for closeness and fear of engulfment. They often carry an illusion of specialness, the belief that ordinary rules don't apply to them, that they're destined for something extraordinary. Christopher Lasch, in The Culture of Narcissism, described the rise of self-love in modern society, a phenomenon that has many similarities with the Puer archetype. Social media has amplified this trend, creating an attention economy where personal value is measured by likes and followers, encouraging self-idealization and a sense of false specialness. They often introduce themselves through capability, not achievement, frequently talking about what they could do or will do, rarely about what they have done. Another prominent characteristic is the search for pinnacle experiences, always craving strong sensations and peak experiences, leading to an up and down psychology. An important perspective in Jung's psychology is the relationship between Puer and senex, the archetype of the old man. According to analyst James Hillman, each archetype contains the seed of its opposite. Within Puer lies latent senex, and within senex lies Puer. Senex represents order, structure, tradition, and discipline. When this archetype dominates, we become rigid, conservative, and unable to adapt to change. This is the image of the grumpy old man in psychology who criticizes youth and reminisces about the past. The real challenge is not to abandon Puer to become senex, but to find balance, an intersection that Jung called the creative adult. The polarization between these two archetypes can be clearly seen in tense father-son relationships, where the father often represents the senex principle, while the son represents the Puer principle. The reconciliation between two generations often reflects the internal integration process between the two archetypes. The Puer Aeternus archetype also has different manifestations through the lens of gender. Although Jung and von Franz primarily focused on male manifestations, the corresponding female archetype, Puella Aeterna, eternal girl, is also widely present. Puella often manifests through maintaining excessively youthful appearance and behavior, waiting for Prince Charming instead of building an independent life, difficulty facing the aging process, and avoiding important decisions to maintain the illusion of countless possibilities. Feminist Simone de Beauvoir analyzed how women are encouraged by society to maintain a girl state, cute, dependent, and unthreatening, even as adults. This social pressure exacerbates the Puer tendency in many women, making it more difficult to develop an independent identity. In popular culture, the character Holly Golightly in Breakfast at Tiffany's is a quintessential example of Puer, charming, spontaneous, but fearful of attachment and constantly running away from commitments. In the modern world, both Puer and Puella archetypes are being redefined as traditional gender boundaries gradually dissolve. In the field of neurodevelopmental research, scientists have discovered that adolescent and adult brains have significant differences in structure and function. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision-making, impulse control, and long-term thinking, only fully develops in the early 20s. This means that biologically, the transition from adolescent to adult thinking is a prolonged process. However, cultural and social factors can either support or hinder this process. In traditional societies, rites of passage play an important role in marking and supporting this transition. But in modern society, these rituals have disappeared. creating a gap in psychosocial development. To work with Puer energy, we can practice shadow work, identifying and accepting parts of ourselves that we typically deny. This requires honesty and courage to face negative aspects of oneself. Specific exercises might include journaling about the deep reasons behind habits of procrastination or quitting midway, recording repetitive patterns in relationships, or reflecting on unfulfilled dreams and why they remain just dreams. Establishing conscious boundaries, creating structure and discipline in life without feeling imprisoned, is also important. This can include establishing daily routines, committing to schedules, and learning to say no to distractions. These boundaries aren't chains, but frameworks that help us focus energy on meaningful activities. Practicing gradual commitment, starting with small commitments and building up, creates commitment muscles, helping us overcome the fear of constraints. This can begin with committing to completing a small project, maintaining a habit for 30 days, or learning a new skill for a specific period. Each completed commitment builds confidence and the ability to tolerate the discomfort that comes with long-term attachment. Jung's technique of active imagination, dialoguing with different parts of our souls, can help integrate Puer and Senex. In this practice, one imagines conversations with different parts of oneself, allowing both Puer and Senex to express their needs, fears, and dreams. The goal isn't for one part to win over the other, but to find understanding and compromise between these aspects. Creating personal rites of passage can also help mark psychological maturity, especially in modern society, which lacks clear transition rituals from youth to adulthood. This could be a solo journey, a significant physical challenge, a major creative project, or any activity that marks an important transition in life. These rituals provide symbolic structure for deeper psychological transformation. Another practical method is paradoxical intervention, in which one actively accepts and even exaggerates their Puer aspect for a limited time, allowing it full expression. This often leads to profound awareness of both the value and limitations of Puer energy, facilitating more natural integration. Mindfulness practice is also particularly useful for those influenced by Puer Aeternus. Throughout history, different spiritual traditions have taught that dwelling in the present is the key to achieving inner peace. For Puer, who is always oriented toward the future or idealizing the past, learning to live in the present is a special challenge but also an opportunity for transformation. Mindfulness helps us recognize that real life happens here and now, not in an idealized future. In an era where the boundaries between youth and adulthood are increasingly blurred, Jung's concept of Puer Aeternus becomes more important than ever. We often see many people in their 30s and 40s still searching for their true identity. The core of psychological maturity is not abandoning the positive qualities of youth, creativity, imagination, flexibility, but integrating them with their responsibility, commitment, and depth of adulthood. Jung believed that the goal is not to eliminate Puer, but to transform it. The creative fire of Puer, when combined with the discipline of Senex, can produce meaningful achievements rather than just endless potential that never becomes reality. The journey from Puer Aeternus to complete adult is not a straight path. It's a spiral process. Sometimes we advance, sometimes we retreat. Poet Robert Bly describes this process as reclaiming the long shadow of childhood, not leaving it behind, but bringing it with us into adulthood, transforming it from a source of insecurity into a source of creativity and vitality. This process is more like gardening than architecture. We don't create something entirely new, but nurture and shape what is already there. Perhaps the most important question is not, how can I overcome Puer Aeternus? But how can I honor my youthful, creative energy while building a mature, meaningful life? True integration doesn't require us to abandon the freshness, curiosity, or possibilities of youth. It requires us to make them real and meaningful through commitment and action. As Jung wrote, one does not develop through what one has already mastered, but by advancing toward what one has yet to master.
Reflect on the aspects of Puer in your life. Are they helping you grow or holding you back? In what parts of your life are you still running away from commitment? What small steps can you take today to begin integrating this archetype into a more complete self, balancing freedom and responsibility, capability and achievement? And most importantly, how can you bring the valuable qualities of Puer, enthusiasm, imagination, the ability to see possibilities, into your adult life without being imprisoned by them? Perhaps in seeking answers to these questions, we can discover a path that both respects youth and embraces maturity, a path leading to true wholeness.
Thank you for watching. If this topic resonates with you, please share your experience in the comments below. And remember to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss upcoming videos on depth psychology.